People never give you what you want. They won't quit bugging you either. But I thought they'd leave me in peace, here of all places. But they don't. They just keep writing letters to tell me that I won't be going to heaven when I die. Or sometimes they say that if I'm ever allowed out, they'll come and find me and cut off various bits and bobs of my anatomy and hold them up for me to admire. Funny thing is, they keep forgetting to sign their names. Well, now I feel like writing a letter of my own. Don't know who it's to yet, but Dr. Cartwright thinks it'll be good for me. And he's lent me some Basildon Bond and a pencil. So, here goes. Now, I used to belong to this book group. I know it sounds sad, but it was just a bit of fun, really. It all started when Maria, a woman I used to work with, spotted me reading one lunch break. Henry James, would you believe? Washington Square. Not that I think he's up to much, old Henry, if you ask me. Bit short on car chases. Anyway, she comes over and asks me what I think of the book. Well, I'm about to tell her when she says it's her favourite of his novels. So straight away I say how great I think it is. How the central character's consciousness is refracted through layers of irony, or some guff like that. Then she invites me to a book group she's part of. I put my hands behind my back so she wouldn't see them shaking. She says it's miles away from where I live, but that she could give me a lift back in her car. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I simply nod and smile. Now, the kingpin of this little literary salon was Chester, who was, as he puts it, head honcho in accounts. Chester. You know the type. The insignia of a yachting club on the top pocket of his blazer. He was always hogging the attention, talking all the time, talking nonsense too. And anyway, he only set the group up so he could eye up all the women. Please. I don't mind someone having a bit of fun, but there's something about the way he did it. Like a cricket rubbing its back legs together. So every month I would turn up in his hideous front lounge. The colour scheme was every flavour of Bird's Angel Delight. I went there for several months, till one evening when the fun really started. Chester always chose the books, and then he always hated them. The book we were mangling that evening was some tripe about a serial killer who was also a wine grower and a conductor with the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra. It seems he would leave his victims in unusual shapes that Inga Bjornstrand, the neurotic pathologist, realises are Greek letters spelling out the prophecy of the coming of the beast from the Book of Revelations. Now, Chester is sat on his butterscotch sofa, giving his usual chat about how overrated the book is, and eyeing up the talent at the same time, which, to be honest, isn't much, apart from Maria, but she definitely wasn't interested. Now, Chester usually likes to mouth off uninterrupted, but this evening something goes a little bit wrong, because Keith is there. Keith is the sort who's embittered at being thrown out of librarian college. Bad teeth, smorgasbord breath, dandruff epaulets on his padded shoulders. Not good news. But this evening, Keith gets snotty and accuses Chester of being nothing more than an elitist snob. Well, I lean back in my mint chocolate reclining armchair and watch the fun. Chester, you can see, is on the back foot and not liking it. No one's going to accuse him of being an intellectual. To be honest, I don't think many people ever have. So he calls up reinforcements and looks to the ladies to back him up. Then I notice that he and Keith are both looking in Maria's direction. Well, Chester's wife is there too, Bridget. She knows what he's about. She's a lot younger than he is. And not so bad all in all, in a has lots of cats and makes her own pottery kind of way. Suddenly her face crumples and she slips out of the room. So, off I go to the kitchen, where I see Bridget bending over the sink, having a good cry. And I'm like, what's the matter? And she's like, it's Chester. He's at it again. And then she cries some more. But this time, it's on my shoulder. Then I kiss her, like I'm kissing away the tears. Bingo. Soon we're meeting up for coffees together and understanding little chats. And before the month is out, we're upstairs at her place doing some corrective training on the mattress. I go home well satisfied, having done my good deed for the day. About 3 weeks later, there's a ring on the doorbell. I peer out from behind the curtain and see Chester standing there. Oops, thinks I. Time to exit stage left. After all, Bridget might have spilled the beans, particularly as I've been ignoring her calls recently. But it's too late. He's already spied me through the window. So there's nothing to do but open up and smile. But when I open the door, Chester invites himself in and sits on the sofa and finds a half-empty bottle of vodka on a cushion, which he waves at me, inviting me to get him a glass. I can't find one, so he drinks it out of a teacup. Chin chin, he says, and knocks it back. And then he leans in confidentially, and after some interminable preamble where he pretends to be interested in me, tells me he's thinking of playing away. Why I should be interested, I have no idea. But I'm obviously meant to ask, and so I inquire, who's the lucky lady? And he says, Maria. I stand up and go and close the curtain so he can't see my expression. I look back and see him sitting there, trying to twinkle roguishly. And get this, he wants me to put in a good word for him with Maria. Because she is, and I quote, desperate after breaking up with her boyfriend. The gospel, according to Chester at any rate. In return for said favour, he would put a good word in for me at the next middle management meeting. I may get a productivity bonus. Sure, I say, not wanting to put anyone's nose out of joint if I don't have to. I smile and offer him another drink. Then, when he's in the gents, I wander outside and somehow or another, the brakes on his Renault Megane get accidentally bled. Oops. Silly me. Was my face red when I found out the following day that Chester's car had come off the road and he'd been involved in a teensy bit of a fatal accident. I rang Bridget to find out when the funeral was. After all, Maria might be going. But she just put the phone down on me. I don't want a funeral. Burn me up and throw me away. And not anywhere romantic. Not in a stream or off a cliff. And no family or any music or anything like that. No priest either. Just send a civil servant out one Tuesday morning, carrying my remains in an old baked beans tin. Chuck them off a motorway bridge. The ashes will float down and get churned up by the passing traffic. No one will notice. No one will care. and I will be forgotten about by the time he's back in the canteen for lunch. A bored, pasty-faced clerk gets an hour out of the office, and who knows, maybe he might sneak off for a walk round the park, or pop upstairs to flirt with the girl he fancies in human resources. He'd be the only person I ever did anything for. The book group was suspended after Chester so inconsiderately handed in his lunch pail, and all in all I was feeling a bit down. It wasn't the group I missed, but the rides home. I wanted to ask Maria in for a coffee or something, but I could never get the words out. It never seemed right. A couple of weeks or so after Chester's bonfire night, there was a ding-dong on my bell. I'd been meaning to disconnect it, but I hadn't got round to it. I opened the door and there's Keith, of all people. My arm was leaning against the door frame, but he still managed to slip past me, pretending I'm just kidding about not letting him in. He wafted into the lounge, picking his way over the rubbish. I went off into the kitchen to get a couple of cans, which was still pretty warm since my fridge had packed up some while ago. When I came back, he was over by the mantelpiece, where there was a picture of Maria. I'd found it in her bag one time. Her boyfriend used to be standing next to her, but that part got lost. As I make my way over to Keith, he waves the picture of Maria in my face, as if he had the right to touch it. And he tells me that he's thinking of moving in on her, now that that old bore Chester is out of the way. He actually thought. No one could. I'm sorry, Keith, but you had what could be best described as a happy-go-lucky attitude towards personal hygiene. If not a stranger to the tub, you certainly weren't on first-name terms with it either. I mean, fair play. Anyone who looked like Keith wouldn't want to see themselves naked that often. The reason this bothered me so much was that Maria lived with her mother, and Keith, surprisingly, didn't live alone either. So if they got together, they would have to use my place, and would I please oblige and tidy up a little? I smiled and offered him another drink. He gurgled a couple more cans down and then asked for the what's it. That's actually what he called it, the what's it. I pointed the way. Then I went out to the shed, picked something up, went upstairs and waited on the landing. When he came out, I helped him downstairs. No one has ever gone down those stairs so fast. But what to do now? Keith was lying on the floor and wasn't going to be getting up by himself. I put the hammer down and pondered the situation. Keith was already stinking the place out. What would he be like in 5 or 6 hours? Well, probably an improvement, but I couldn't take that chance. You know, it's amazing the uses a wheelbarrow can have when you need it. I found the key to his car in his wallet, so I knew I could give him a lift back. I say, Keith, old sport, I like plenty of legroom up front. Would you mind travelling in the boot? Oh, no problem, Geoff, old pal. Anything for you? Why, thank you, Keith. You're such a trooper. I found his address in his wallet, and so I drove him back and took him up the back alley. Oh, matron! I helped him along the garden path, and I must have been in a silly mood because as we got to the top, I noticed a deck chair leaning against the garden shed, and I couldn't help myself. I sat him in it. Then I found an empty beer can in the jacket pocket and slipped it into his hand. It was only a bit of a laugh, really. I was just finishing up when the lights in the house came on. His wife, I guess. Time I wasn't here, thought I, and hightailed it out of there. But as I walked along the road, I felt oddly depressed. The following evening I was just settling in for the night when there was a knock at the door. The doorbell wasn't working, I'd taken the batteries out. I ignored the noise and finished up what I was doing. But then they knocked again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And they kept knocking until the door came off its hinges. Then they came in and cut me down from the light fitting. Well, that's a pair of braces ruined. It was Her Majesty's Constabulary. And once they were sure that I was wide awake, they invited me back to their place. Well, I wasn't doing anything, so I went. After a couple of months, they introduced me to a dear old judge who recommended that I come down here to this little spot by the sea. It's nice. I think I may stay a while. I put a sign in the common room. It says, you don't have to be clinically psychotic to work here, but it helps. Dr. Cartwright says it's a sign I'm becoming integrated. Also, on Thursdays, I get to work in the kitchen. And what I don't know about packet raspberry blancmange just isn't worth knowing. I read in the paper that you were leaving the country. Probably for the best. I couldn't have made you happy. You know it, Maria. Oh. So it's you I'm writing this letter to. I never expected we'd be together. I never dreamed. Just next door would have been enough. Could have heard you walking into the kitchen, watching a film or listening to a CD. If I timed it right, our hands touched when we put on our seatbelts. I look through my reinforced window and I see the planes glinting as they fly over. Maybe you're on one of them, flying out somewhere warm and glorious, with yellow sand and shimmering schools of tropical fish. And it said in the paper you got back together with your boyfriend. But I know that's not true. I know you wouldn't throw yourself away on anyone, or cheapen yourself. And I hope that a shark comes up behind him when you'll swing together, and bang! And you scream and you scream and you scream, helpless, and it's no good. He screams and thrashes about, and there's nothing you can do to save him from the teeth like icicles as they rip the flesh from his bone and turn the sea red. No. Sorry. You're flying high above me. If you look out of your window, you'll see this square building with high walls. Don't look down. Look out to the sun on the sea. You won't notice this infinitely small man beneath you, tearing up a piece of